Moore Street to work with the City Council, 1916 relatives and all relevant stakeholders to implement an urban framework plan.
This government, the protection, preservation and development of 14 to 17 Moore Street, and to use the legislative powers at their disposal to stop NAMA, a state agency, from selling off the family silver, our family silver. And their time is up now. And those of us that summon once again to our flag and gather here this morning, this afternoon, call them out on their failures. Today, we demand from this rally that the outgoing Taoiseach, Mr. Enda Kenny, sit up, take note and defend what is rightfully ours. The Irish people and men who fought for a real republic, that we now, who fight for that republic yet, stand together and resist the destruction by this government or any other of our national heritage and culture. We will, my friends, prevail. Guramila Mahagwev Galer.
Nobody really knew anything about the battlefield site. We gathered support, and I thought the most important group of supporters we could get is if we could find one or two relatives. And I found Jim Connolly Heron, and I found Eamon Kent, and I found the McDonoughs, and together we all worked and we found somebody from each of the 16 executed leaders' families who supported us. And I thought, wow, now we can really do business with the government. How wrong I was. I remember walking into meetings in this building and various government departments and sitting down opposite nameless and faceless civil servants. And I sat there, and beside me were the Connollys and the Pearces and the Clarks, and I thought, they'll have to give us the buildings. But no. In a very short time I realised that we were dealing with a level of hostility that I've never seen before. They were hiding something. They were embarrassed. But actually they were frightened because they were meeting the real deal. They were meeting the ghosts of the past. And when we walked out of one meeting, I turned to Jim Connolly and I said, do you know something, Jim? They're the enemy. And they've been the enemy ever since. And did I think that we would end up after all these years in a courtroom and with an occupation? Absolutely. I knew that we were not going to win by protests or rallies. I knew that was part of the campaign, but I knew in the end it would go to the bitter end, and it did. And before Christmas, we initiated legal proceedings to get a judicial review. And it was put back, and we worried. And every day we were down there with our teams, looking at the site, making sure, taking photographs, going down at 3 o'clock in the morning, just making sure nobody was in there. And we held it, and we held it. And then last week, when we walked down there, we saw the builders had gone in. We called an emergency meeting with our legal team, and the date we got was the 11th of January. And we thought, can we hold the terrace? And we realised that it was going to have to be an occupation. And I held a meeting with our legal team and with some of our supporters. I got a phone call in the middle of that meeting which said an occupation had happened. It was an accidental occupation, but it saved the day. It held the line. And while those brave people in the Moore Street garrison, and it was a garrison in the best sense of the word, while they were working in there, we went to town in the courts and we got that stay. And so the 2nd of February, we will be going in with all determination and all of the history behind us to go in and win Moore Street. It's not going to be easy. We have to keep the campaign rolling and we have to make sure that everybody is involved. But I personally, on behalf of myself and certainly the campaign, I want to give a very hearty round of applause to the Moore Street Garrison 2016. I'll finish up with 2 short stories. We've been giving battlefield tours on Moore Street for years. Many of you have been on them. And recently we were asked to give a tour to the team that are organising Project 2016, specifically the Rising. And we gave them the tour, we were happy to. And at the end of the tour I pulled out that famous photograph of Porrick Pierce surrendering. We all know that photograph. And I showed it to the team. And I said, this is where Pierce surrendered and there is no plaque. And they said, are you sure that's Porrick Pierce? said, yes, Paula Pearson. They said, how do you know? And I said, well, it says underneath the picture. They said, no, but like, how do you know that's it? And I got a bit worried, and I said, well, of course it's Brigadier General Low beside him. That's the surrender picture. It's iconic. And they said, well, no, like, are you sure? And I got a bit thrown for a minute. I thought, has somebody found out it was a forgery? And I got slightly concerned, and one of the women said to me, there's no need to be so confrontational. And I said, but it is Paula Pearson. She said, well, I've never seen that photograph. And I looked in amazement. I said, I can't believe what you've just said to me. And then the rest of the team who were organising the scenery said, we've never seen the photograph either. Jim Connolly nearly collapsed beside me, and then they were rescued by the PR man who said, well, actually, I think I've seen it. That is the level of what you're dealing with. These are the people who are organising the people's celebration of our rising, the centenary. They don't know what they're doing. They can't even identify Pearson in a photograph. What happened to the conservation officers? What happened to the heritage officers when Moore Street was falling down?
It was, people remember that building. There seems to be a bit of a thing going on with occupations in it, because 2 years ago the workers occupied it when it was the Paris Bakery, and it was the subject of really an accidental occupation. It wasn't pre-planned by anybody, and in a way that kind of makes it all the more interesting, because there was no major preparation put into it, and yet large numbers of people mobilised very quickly to it. And after the slightly chaotic scenes in the first couple of hours, we got it all bedded down. It became apparent just within that room a very broad cross section of people from many organisations, very many political tendencies, and from none, that this issue it's right here in the heart for people. It's about, is it developer versus culture in context. Second point I want to make is just about the need for unity on this. I would not have thought I would be sat on the platform.
We're here because we're sending a clear message to the Taoiseach and to Heather Humphreys. There's no doubt about it that the Minister and the Taoiseach and certainly their Fine Gael councillors and Dublin City Council and some others, what they want is they want a photograph of a minister or a Taoiseach going down to Moore Street in Easter week and cutting a green ribbon on something, anything. And then after that, the developer can proceed and build a giant shopping mall that nobody wants. That's what their aim is. We must have something in 2016 is what they say. Well, we say no. What we want is we want our heritage, we want our site, we want our revolutionary quarter. We want to win this battle now, and then we will develop it as we should develop it, not for a minister to cut a green ribbon. Before they got the word, and at a very short notice mobilise all their forces, and that's what we need to do. We need to be ready, because the developers and the builders could go in there any time. Any attempt could be made to go into that terrace or in behind it or anywhere to try to start work again and to try to start destruction again. We've shown that we can and will be ready to stop that, and we can and will be ready to stop that if they attempt it again. So, a reach Gramila Mahagrib, agus Lanamid Arai Gleshon Trid,